Well, here we are with Andrew Swift. Hello, Andrew Swift.
Hello, Sean Wayland.
It's a bit early in the morning, so things aren't operating very smoothly at the moment, and I don't think either of us are ready for an interview. Oh, hang on, let me put the microphone on high. Yeah. Good. So, here we are. And the first question is, tell me about your drum teacher at school. Did you have a drum teacher when you were at school, or how did you learn to play the drums?
Okay. Well, I originally started. I guess it was kind of an accident in a way. Like I had started at a new school, and I was in class one day, and I'd kind of become friendly with this kid, and I noticed after lunch he wasn't in the classroom. So he came back into the classroom. I was like, "Where were you?" He was like, "Oh, I was at band practice." And I thought, "Oh, okay, so you can miss kind of class time if you play in the band." Perfect. So I asked him, to take me to the music teacher, and he took me to the music teacher, and I asked, like I said, I'd like to join the band. And he said to me, the only instrument they had was they needed a drummer, and I was like, okay. And I mean, I had yeah.
So the drums shows you.
Kind of. He asked me if I'd had any. The
universe made you a drummer,
right?
Son, you're going to be a drummer.
So that I was fortunate that the school had they had a private they had private teachers come in.
Is this in Canberra, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you could have a 30-minute lesson every week. Mm-hmm. You could sign up and have so I had that was in 5th grade, and so I started, and my teacher's name was Derek Brasington. His nickname was Noddy because he would nod up and down when he played the drums. And Noddy, I studied with him from 5th grade all the way till I left that school in 12th grade. And he was a great teacher. He exposed me to a lot of different stuff, and it was I guess from a drum point of view, stylistically it was pretty well rounded, and the school had a pretty strong band program, so I was playing in concert bands, and they had a jazz band, couple of they had one for younger kids, like a stage band type thing, and then a senior jazz band, like a big band, and so I was really involved in that. And actually, I forget what grade I was in. I might have been in, I don't know, 9th or 10th grade or something. And there was a drummer who, I think his name was Heath Whitfield, and he was in the 12th grade, and he was finishing up, and he sort of, I overheard a conversation where he mentioned something about a jazz studies course at the Canberra School of Music, and I kind of became intrigued with that idea. I never knew that people studied music, as a vocation or a career, and or to lead towards that anyway. So, and I just kind of became more and more interested in that, and found out. Actually, I know this is kind of getting convoluted, but in the meantime, I had
we're in the digital domain, so that we're not going to run out of tape.
Okay.
And I'm going to get an Advil while you do this. I got a headache. You keep
talking. Well, I had started taking bass lessons at the school too, upright bass lessons, and
hello viewers.
Yeah.
Found the Panadol. Yeah, keep talking. So you were doing bass lessons.
Yeah.
And you started playing guitar as well.
Not at that time, but my bass teacher, he kind of I sort of really wasn't super interested in learning classical upright bass, and he referred me to the guy who was teaching bass at the CSM at that time, and became one of his name was George Urbacek.
Oh yeah, right. Someone else talked about him.
And I I became a private student of his. I was still in high school, but then he also used to run the ensembles at the Canberra School of Music had a prep course for.
Do you want some Tylenol?
No, I'm good, thanks. Thanks.
Yeah.
Maybe later.
Okay.
And they had a prep course where if you were thinking of, going into the degree program, it was like an after-school thing for high schoolers and college students, 11th and 12th grade students. And he was running ensembles for that, and they needed an extra bass player, so he invited me to come and play bass. So, because I knew a little bit about basic walking lines through changes and stuff.
So licky bass.
Yeah. And so I did that, and that's where I sort of, got introduced to this jazz department at the Canberra School of Music. And then kind of that coupled with that experience with that drummer was talking about that maybe that is an option for what he was considering doing. I just started hanging around there more, really, and I would go to I would sit in and observe the big band rehearsals, and there were a lot of great musicians who have since gone on to have careers in Australia in the band at that time, like Greg Royal was a bass player, and Stuart Kerwin, Anthony Cables, trumpet player and trombone player, and Mark Sutton, drummer. So, it was cool to be able to kind of sit there and just listen and check it out. I'd never really seen a big band before other than the school jazz band, so being able to see that was it was nice. And eventually I just became more and more interested in it and decided to audition for the prep course on drums, and then after that, when I finished high school, I went and...
You went there?
Yeah.
So you must be pretty bummed that they're sort of messing with that school and...
Yeah, I was actually really upset when I found out about that. It was last May, I think. And I just, I don't know. I thought it was kind of lame, really, and it just seemed like the university was throwing the School of Music under the bus. And it seemed that the vice chancellor didn't really have an understanding of what a conservatory is and what it does. Because his big point was that it was too elite and whatever that means. But I guess his concept, I think what he was trying to say was that there was too that private or one-on-one studio instrumental instruction was like a waste of time. It was unrealistic that people would.
People shouldn't learn drumming beyond AC/DC.
I guess
so.
Well, I think he was trying to also say that there was more.
As long as you used sticks that were the size of, like baseball bats, and 2 drums that you pound on.
Right.
That would be for the people. Is that what he means by?
No, he was.
Sorry, it's early. Yeah, I mean.
I think it was more the thing where the school had, I think, become more selective in its like process of admissions and things like that, and he felt that they needed to probably generate more revenue. They needed to have more students, an influx of more students come in. So, we have to change the course from something where it's like, perhaps there's a limited number of slots because we only have certain teachers who can perform a certain workload and teach a certain number of students. We have to modify the course so that that incorporates more broad spectrum of things like music business and.
Did you ever teach a drummer yourself in Canberra that had been refused entry to the jazz course that you thought they should have been allowed in there, or
no?
Did you ever?
No, I mean, as far as I know, only one of my students from when I was in Canberra, because I sort of.
It seems like if a 16-year-old kid can get access to that thing,
right,
and be brought in, with welcoming arms,
right,
to something without any. You were just some kid who. I'm assuming that you weren't like playing like.
No,
Tony Williams at age 16.
No,
you were just a kid who was enthusiastic
definitely
about
not
playing the drums.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And they let you in there, and
right.
you got to see people trying to improve themselves.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that elitist.
Right. So it was kind of, I mean,
Seems
he was
absurd.
using that, I think it was a lot of semantics to really kind of, you know, sway things to be the way that he wanted them, and I guess he got his way, you know. And it kind of sucks. I feel bad for a lot of, you know, yeah, because, I mean, some of them were, I mean, I really, in terms of musically, owe them a lot, you know.
Yeah, that
like,
really helped you.
Yeah, because after I left my high school and I went and studied at School of Music. Well, actually, even the last year I was in high school, I was studying. I started studying with Colin Horweg, who is, you know, I mean, a great teacher, and an excellent drummer also, you know, in his own right, and he has a lot. He had a lot of really interesting, I guess, viewpoints on creativity and music and improvisation, and it was a good experience to have access to that. You know, and unfortunately, you know, future students will not really have that to the same degree as, you know, I was very fortunate. You know.
Is he somewhat of a traditionalist, or
in what sense?
He's like, in terms of the grounding that he expects you to have as a drummer, or
no? I mean, after coming to the US and sort of seeing different, I guess you could say, schools of jazz drumming here, like, I wouldn't really say that Colin is a traditionalist, like, in the sense of, you know, he's not a hardcore, you know, bebopper, like, got to learn Charlie Wilcoxon rudimental solos and things like that's totally
What's
not
Charlie
his approach.
Wilcox? Excuse my
Okay, he was a drummer who had written a book, or several books actually, of these rudimental solos. Philly Joe Jones had studied with him, and a lot of that playing comes from that. Philly Joe kind of like took a lot of those things and devices that were written in these Charlie Wilcoxon solos, and then he used that as a basis, like almost a vocabulary for expanding on, and also, you know, soloing, and so it was sort of integrating like the whole rudimental approach to playing drums with playing jazz.
So are they rhythms written out for all four limbs, or
no? Well, the most kind of, I guess, famous Wilcoxon book is basically like just snare drum and bass drum, and there may be some hi-hat in there too.
So there's two lines of music.
Yeah, but it's all different stickings, so it's like 5-stroke rolls and different kinds of paradiddles and flams and drags, and all of those are written out into like, they're very melodic, actually, like melodic kind of solos. That
so you just play through the thing with your. Usually, do you always play one line with the snare drum, or will you play the bass drum line with the? There's a line for your hands and a line for your feet.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Essentially.
And you just play it. Right. It's written out. Is the sticking written into it?
The sticking's written in, yeah.
Sticking's into it.
Because that's an important part of it. Is the actual.
So you learn the thing.
Mechanics behind it.
It's a mantra.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's
a drummer's mantra.
There's a few things like that. Like there's Alan Dawson had like a
Buddhism for drummers. Okay, you must learn your mantra now, son.
Drumming in the art of motorcycle
Here's your
maintenance.
wafer. Here's your glass of wine, and here's the text. Memorize this and come back in a week. Is that it? That's
yeah,
kind of
Cole doesn't really teach like that.
So Cole.
His approach was more like, you know, one thing that really stuck with me from what he kind of, one, I guess, approach that really stuck with me from what he taught was just taking even like a measure of music and finding like all the music that's inside that. Mm-hmm. So say if you transcribe something, or you, I mean, for the sake of convenience, like there's another book that's widely used in the drumming community called Syncopation for the Modern Drummer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen that book.
And it's very simple. Like, it's just a line for snare drum, a line line for bass drum, and you know there are different kinds of rhythms that are written out, and no sticking is included, so it's very open for interpretation. So you know, one idea would be to take there's several syncopation exercises in there that designed to kind of teach you how to read syncopated notation. So one idea would be to take just one measure out of that and then try and on the drums find like whatever music you can make out of that. You know, whether it's through changing the timbre of each note, like kind of voicing it around the drum set a different way, or whether it's, you know, playing the space inside of it and leaving those notes out, or you know, that kind of thing.
So just being creative with, well, how would I put it? Just using a small amount of information and being as creative as you can with what you have available, and limiting what's available. And in terms of like, the drums are an interesting one for me. That's why I'm talking to you about it, because it's I feel like of all of the instruments, it's maybe one of the hardest ones to figure out from the other side of the world.
Right.
Would you say that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've thought a lot about this.
I remember seeing Jeff Watts for the first time in New York at the Zinc Bar, and I loved it, but I was so surprised at what it really sounded like after listening to it thousands of times in Australia. Then when I was finally standing in front of it, it was like absolutely nothing like what I had expected it to be. Right. You know?
Right. No, I totally agree. I mean, and I think there's also the whole, there's the whole thing about like, just being there and seeing it in person, like also the physicality of it.
It goes into your body.
Right.
The bass drum moves your organs when you're in the room with it.
Right.
You know. It does.
Right. Sub kick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I there's no substitute that for that, definitely. But I also think like just, you know, I mean, when I went through the school of music in Canberra, it was like it was kind of like the mid '90s. Like I started there in '94, and you know that was sort of before this mass dissemination of information through the internet and before YouTube, and so
So when you were, I'm just trying to put in perspective for me. So when you were 16, what year was that?
When I was 16, it would have been 1992. I was in 11th grade.
So there was a fair amount of CDs around.
Yeah, there were a lot of CDs.
There was that shop in Civic, you went downstairs and they had a bunch of CDs. You remember that?
Impact Records.
Probably that's what it was called.
Yeah, they didn't really have a huge jazz department. There was a store in Monica, not too far from where the jazz campus was at the time, called Abel's, and they had a fairly large, you know, jazz selection. But you know, I mean, the CDs in Australia, they were at that time was still $27, $28 a pop, you know. So like, I'm just saying, like in terms of
it's different to now when it's all free.
Well, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about like having the money, the wherewithal to purchase a lot of it.
You couldn't get all of it. I mean, you could see it all now for free.
Right.
The whole history.
Right. And then too, like, I think the visual for a lot. I mean, I think for drummers, like, well, I don't know. I could be wrong, but there is definitely a visual element to it.
Sure.
That you kind of miss when you listen to it on records, and that was sort of what people in, you know, I guess our generation, when I know you're a little bit older than me, but
not much
though. You know,
but I came from the real dark ages.
Right.
You know, like there was a period where LPs had been phased out and CDs had just arrived. This is like 1986 or so. Okay. And there was actually nothing.
Wow, no kidding.
You couldn't get Kind of Blue. I searched for Kind of Blue for 3 years.
Wow.
A teacher said to get it, I couldn't get it.
Wow. Did the con have a record library?
Yeah, but I didn't know that you could go there.
Oh, really? Wow.
People weren't as connected then.
Yeah, okay.
Sydney's a big place,
Right.
and you know, just even finding a record store that had jazz records in it was kind of, oh, there's this place. You know, you would ask people.
Right. Sure.
People would send you to some record that sold soundtracks, or you know, it was really hard to find things. I found a second-hand record store, Ashwoods, and there were Ashwoods and Lawson, so that was really where I found the music,
Right.
or what I could find. But even then, like, that was only, you would hunt through those bins and, you know,
Yeah,
I remember
yeah.
finding Thrust by Herbie Hancock after like years of, you know, and like, you know, one day, you know, after hours of like, ba-dum, you know, that's it, man, you know. It was so, I got it home and the sound quality was stuffed, you know, it was scratched and crappy, but I wore that thing out, you know.
Wow.
It was so exciting to get it. I feel so sorry for kids now that just like, it's all on their phone when they're 6
Right.
years old. They
Right.
miss the joy of that.
That's
I don't
true.
even know if I'd be a jazz musician.
Right.
If it wasn't for the sort of, the fact that it was like, yeah, crawling through the pyramids to get it, you know? You know? So what, sorry, I'm raving myself,
No.
which is not cool. So, what did Cole say about like trying to figure out? Were you trying to figure out what Philly Joe was doing? And
Well,
yourself,
well,
or?
I guess not so much. I listened to that a lot. Like some of the first records that I listened to when I was, you know, in my first year there was that series by Miles Davis Quintet, like Steaming with the Miles Davis Quintet, Working with the Miles Davis, Working, you know.
They were actually the first Miles Davis records that were released in Australia.
Oh, really? Yeah, I didn't.
Cooking and Steaming, yeah.
Okay.
The CBS stuff arrived 5 years later.
Okay. Yeah, the school had a record library, had all that stuff in it, and I
I remember that too. Sorry, I'm talking too much, but I remember like Nefertiti and ESP being released, and like, because all I'd ever heard was like, yeah, Olio and
right.
Bubba Blackbird. And,
Sorry, with a fringe.
and
on
then
top.
like, da 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 da. That came out, and then I was like, what is this? What's going on? It was incredible. Anyway, sorry, I'm raving.
No, that's fine.
So you were listening to Cooking and Steaming and
Right. So I mean,
relaxing.
I really loved the music and things, but I can't say I ever really sat down and tried to kind of figure it out, you know. And I never had really come from like a rudimental approach. Even like my teacher Noddy, even though he, you know, had a background coming out of the army, like I never, you know, I learned kind of rudiments basically like you do, like you learn how to play something, a 7-stroke roll or like a paradiddle diddle or something like that. And but I guess never was really kind of broken down to me in terms of like how do you translate that to music in terms of like using those as musical devices or as a melodic device, I guess you could say. And so I never really, I mean, I would kind of maybe try and approximate it just from listening to it, but I didn't know all the mechanics of what he was doing. It wasn't until like much later, like after I came here, that I really like.
Have you seen that Muppet Show thing with the Sesame Street with the two guys going mong mong and like something, right? It's like a telephone or something, and they know this is what you use, but they don't know how it works. It's great. It's great. Oh, are you kidding me? Got 2 interviews at once.
Oh, really?
Yo,
Quentin,
Oh.
what's up?
How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good.
It's good.
Oh, we're gonna have to have 2 at once.
Two. All right.
So what?
Has to happen.
Okay. So you literally just go here.
We're halfway through.
Oh yeah.
So you're gonna join the conversation.
Okay.
We're gonna kill 2 birds with 1 stone. What do you know?
I'm gonna use the bathroom first, and
Good.
then
And take your shoes off.
Okay. Yes.
It's just well organised, well-oiled machine. Well-oiled machine. So keep telling me about Cole and trying to figure out how to play like.
Well, yeah, I mean that wasn't really his approach, you know. Like I actually, got into that stuff more through Mark Sutton. Mark kind of like kept me to, I guess, to like the whole, you know, I didn't really even know what swing was, you know, and like he was the one that kind of broke it down for me, I guess, and showed
Really?
kind of, yeah. Like in terms of, I guess, like the traditional sense of like what you would say swing is, and actually, like he kind of played me some of the Sidewinder by Lee Morgan,
Mm-hmm.
and I had never heard anything like that before,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like so intrigued, particularly by Billy Higgins, that like I just after that went on this like Billy Higgins quest, you know, and it's sort of still going on today.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you hear him play?
You know, I never did. Like, it was kind of, yeah. It's a long story, but I never swung that one, and I kind of regret it, really, to tell you the truth. Or I shouldn't say I kind of regret it. I do regret it.
You regret it?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I saw him play.
that's cool.
Maybe it was Schofield.
Oh right, actually been listening to that record recently. It's a very good one. That
What does he say?
works for me. If you play it first, I'll catch it later or something. Yeah.
Catch it later. That's great. So what do you need, Quinton? Glass of water?
Glass of water? Yeah, that would be great.
So maybe I'll just talk to Andrew for a while.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can be present.
Okay.
And then we'll switch it around.
Okay.
That'd be fun.
You mean present, like in the...
Like present.
Yeah. Okay.
Communicating,
Okay.
but the focus is on. We're still talking to Andrew.
Okay.
It's a bit of fun. So
Should I grab one of these?
grab a chair. Yeah.
For this.
It's good running a jazz Australian party. Do you guys know each other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I can't remember when we met. Yeah. Seems like a
I
while
don't
ago.
remember when we met. Oh, we met at one of Roxy's gigs.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So you didn't meet in Australia.
No.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You met over here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe almost 2 years ago, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So you both met a bunch of Australians over here that you probably didn't know in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much finished up in Canberra, and I did the at the time they had like it was a 3-year course, and then I did an extra year for a grad dip, and then I left after that. I really didn't have intentions of sort of initially of staying here. I mean, I always dreamed of being able to stay here. Like, I was very I don't know, I really just felt like kind of drawn to New York, but it just worked out that I was able to swing it when I got here. And
What did you do? Did you come here straight after you finished school? Or?
pretty much, yeah. Like, I came in January of 1998.
Wow.
Hmm.
But I didn't see you very much.
Yeah, well,
1999. I was here. 99, 2000, 2001.
yeah, I mean,
What did you do? Did you join a cult?
Was there much
No.
of a community of Australian musicians then? Like in
I
India
really
or
don't know, because you know, like, I mean, it's funny you should mention that, because I kind of did end up that way. Like,
Join a cult.
well, it wasn't strictly a cult, but it was. Oh, you're gonna focus the camera on me now?
I want to make sure you're in. I
Gonna
want to make sure
zoom
you're
in
in
on your
perspective.
face.
No, it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was like a cult, you know, kind of thing. But it was, you know, it was just. I don't really want to go too far into it, but it was something that happened that kind of like, I guess it pulled me away from
Music.
yeah what I loved to. Well, I mean, I still played, and I ended up getting into playing more guitar at that time and things, and
The world's best instrument right there. So good decision.
But it was a religious thing.
yeah.
An American church.
It was a Pentecostal church, and I'm definitely not dissing churches, because I mean I still have like a very strong belief and
Still go to
faith
church
or whatever.
on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I play in church and things like that.
Yeah.
And I made a lot of friends doing that. I was playing in a lot of gospel music situations and things. But it just happened that this particular church I was at didn't really have good theology, and unfortunately, there was a lot of manipulation involved and from the church leadership and things, and I guess just
Jazz was evil.
well, I mean,
Billy Higgins was the devil.
it wasn't sort
He
of
was a
told.
junkie, man. That's a bad path.
It wasn't told to me in that way, but it was just kind of like the more the concept of being a musician was kind of looked down upon, I guess, in that particular congregation. And
But making money out of being a priest was okay.
well, yeah, I'm not. I mean, I don't want to go there,
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
but
We're not here to talk about that. Anyway.
but it,
But it is part of the story.
right, and so it sort of it was a diversion, I guess. Like musically, ended up on a bit of a diversion. Like I still kind of would, I still would sometimes like sneak over to Borders or Barnes and Nobles and.
Get the devils.
Because they had these things where you could scan the barcode and put the headphones on. And
Oh
listen.
yeah, you get like a sample, a
Right.
minute sample or something.
So I would check some stuff out.
A
And things.
porno and some headphones.
And I mean, I guess I also, I had, in order to be able to stay here, I had needed some sort of means of legally supporting myself, So I'd started, I had gotten a teaching job, teaching music in an elementary school, and like a Catholic elementary school, and
Is this up in Mountain Vernons too? Or?
no, actually I was in school in Hastings at first, and then
That's quite north of New York, right?
it's maybe 35 minutes on the train from Grand Central.
Okay.
It's not too bad. Yeah, so I mean, I was working full
How did you
time.
end up there?
Well, I
How
mean,
did you end up so far from the city? You still are. How did that happen?
well, actually, I was living in New York City at the time. I was just commuting up there to work because that was where I got a job offer. They had kind of like a centralized employment office where you put an application in, and then this school was interested they were interested in hiring me, and they were able to sponsor me for the correct visa at the time. And
how did you find that church?
that's kind of like a long story. It was actually through some people in Australia.
Really?
But it wasn't really there. Yeah, it was like they had met the guy, and they didn't really know him, so they didn't really kind of know what it was like. And I guess for me, I was 21, and I was pretty green.
Yeah.
I really don't have, in some ways, like I have to take a lot of responsibility for that for myself.
Yeah.
But I made it through.
Did you consider studying at a school in America, like a jazz school?
Yeah, when I was in Australia, I really was wanting to find out more about that, and when I was still living in Australia. But then I saw how much it cost, and it just seemed like so prohibitive. And I think honestly, like part of me felt like I think I was like too in awe of that. Like I don't know whether it was like I didn't think I would be able to like hang,
There was no internet though.
Right. I mean, well, it was sort of like the infancy of the internet. So, like, some of these schools had like a basic website, and some of them I actually had contacted, and they sent me like an admissions packet. But still, even with that, like, a lot of the information that was presented, it was kind of vague, like even
Did you know that you could get a scholarship, or didn't really know that?
No. I mean, I knew about the Fulbright program.
Oh yeah.
But I looked into that too, and I mean, maybe it was like I had too much of a self-defeating attitude, but I just was like, I'd never
be able to do that. But that's different for you, like Quinton. Like you You're going to Purchase, is that right? Or you went to Purchase?
I went
for
to
a while?
Purchase. Yeah, I graduated last May.
And you were able to look it up on the internet and,
Exactly. Yeah.
and figure out and.
Uh-huh.
Did you get some sort of scholarship or a bit of
I
help?
did, yeah. I actually had to defer for a year first, and I was looking around. One of the options was Fulbright. I think I got to the final, like the national finals, but I didn't end up getting it. But there's actually a lot of other like funding through the school itself, and then also like South Australian funding bodies, and then like the Australia Council, and there's a bunch of different ones. So it took me a year to work out how to get it all together, but I eventually made it happen. So,
did you know other Australians that had studied already?
The only other one that I knew was a piano player, also from Adelaide, Matthew Sheens, and he had gone. We both auditioned at the same time, and then he got quite a good scholarship offer straight up and was able to go. So he had gone a year before I did, but that was the only person I knew. Oh, apart from Joe Laurie and Mike Stewart, but they had done that like 5 years before us.
But you could ask them.
Yes, yeah, I could definitely ask them how they made it work, and they definitely helped.
What had Mike Stewart done?
Mike Stewart also went to Purchase. Actually, both Mike Stewart and Joe Laurie went to Purchase.
Right, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's cool. I'll find that out when I talk to Joe Laurie. So you moved to the city. Where were you living when you got here?
Actually, the first month I was here, was not too far from here. I was like at Nicky Perrot's old place on 12th. Is it 12th and 7th over here in Oxford? I don't know. But
that place. Yeah.
Yeah, I stayed there for a month because actually Debbie Kennedy and I travelled over here together.
Really?
Yeah. We kind of took the same plane and.
Really?
Yeah. And so I, they worked it out where I was able to stay there for a month, and then I had, in the meantime, I was trying to organize my own accommodation, and it's funny, like the band teacher from high school, the guy who got me into playing the drums, he was a member of the Salvation Army, and he had some connection here. It was like on the Upper West Side. They have like it's like a retired. It's like a home for retired folks, kind of like a retirement home. Mm-hmm. And so I was renting a room there. I got 2 meals a day.
Living the dream.
So I was there for a few months, and and then basically my money ran out, and so I ended up kind of staying with people that I knew for a while.
Wow.
And then until like I was able to get my job, and then from there I kind of saved up enough to get an apartment, and then
where was that?
It was on 118th and 3rd, like right above what is now Creole. It used to be a Puerto Rican restaurant that would blast like music like at like 3 a.m. So yeah, and I lived there for a couple of years. And
you lived above Creole.
Yeah, but it wasn't Creole at the time. But
I played there a little bit. I was there, and some young guys threw eggs at the restaurant while we were playing.
That place, it doesn't exist anymore, right?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think it sort of does. I don't know.
I felt like it was a racial thing. Something.
Oh, really?
We were playing in this place. There was maybe one black person. I think the band leader was black, but it's like me and a few people just in that.
And they threw eggs at you while playing.
Well, there's a glass window behind the band on the street, and our backs were to this window, and then just like eggs just started pelting onto the. I mean, maybe they were just kids. I mean, I guess that's a pretty. Maybe that's a weird way to interpret something like that as it being racial. But I just felt the vibe. I always felt, back in those days, it was always like going up to that part of Harlem was always a bit. That part of Harlem's pretty funky. I was always like the only white person running around. So when people start throwing stuff at you, you kind of you know,
think it's
it's
connected.
hard not to make that connection. I don't know. So you were in a black church for a while, right? Is that you still sort of playing in black churches?
Yeah.
And you mostly play guitar, or?
Yeah. Like playing.
Wow.
I don't have gospel chops, so on drums. So.
And is there a drummer with like that does all that? Plays like lots of notes on the drums.
Oh, there's heaps of guys like that. Yeah.
At
Do you
your
play
church?
Well, the guy who plays at my church, he's actually like really into Vinny Colaiuta, and he's kind of he comes out of that, but he's not really. He's sort of almost like anti-gospel chops, and he's actually a phenomenal keyboard player too. But there are other guys that played with and know that are really, especially a lot of the younger guys. You know, like I sort of was fortunate in a sense to be involved in the gospel scene in New York, because New York has a pretty heavy gospel scene, like, and it's, I think now because of like the way that the internet is and YouTube and everyone's kind of can get out there so easily now, it's becoming a little bit different. But New York, there were a lot of influential people who came out of here, like Timothy Wright, Hezekiah Walker, Eric McDaniel. Like they all had choirs, and it was, I kind of came in on like the tail end of some of that. Like, so I played some services and things where like some of those guys would be around and they would bring their choir through or whatever. And it definitely is like I was thinking about it, it's almost like a very highly developed form of folk music or something, like in a way. And
there's no university.
No, and it's
and information is passed around person to person. And
the way that there's definitely like a certain sound, like keyboard wise, like when it comes to voicings and even things that like traditional theorists or people who are into harmony would say, like functional harmony, would say that it's wrong, but it works. And it was just something that was like really helped develop my ear. I was playing totally by ear, and
I feel like McCoy Tyner, sorry to cut you off, but
no,
but someone like that, it'd be hard for someone to do that now, what he did harmonically.
In what sense? What do you mean?
Well, it would be wrong. It would be
to play like that.
Yeah, like he just
that.
sort of came up with this thing, this way of doing things, and that he just kind of, it's sort of like, just did what sounded cool to him. And I still see that in gospel music.
Right.
I see that sort of like, no one's told them how you're supposed to do it.
Right.
They have a stylistic thing on them that's just sort of like, it has to sound like something, and they've heard a lot of things, but there's still an incredible amount of freedom, and you see people just coming up with all sorts of interesting, like...
Right.
And it's a bit like McCoy in that they're like sort of, they know what a diminished chord is, and they know what a major triad is, and
right.
Well, what happens if you just stack two of those and then move them around? What would it sound like?
Right.
And McCoy's a bit like that, like, I mean, it's interesting. I see that, like, just... I feel like that music is sort of the last area of real, black creativity left.
Right. I mean, it definitely is very... It's like highly creative stylistically, and it's driven... It's almost driven by kind of this... Sometimes it's kind of like this macho, like, thing to be like...
Yeah, the drum chops thing's real, like...
Right, but even on the organ, like someone will play something and they'll intentionally play something that sort of sounds a little out and then bring it back just to kind of like,
be like, hey,
flex their muscles a little.
Yeah.
And
well, jazz was like that too.
Right.
It's a bit frowned upon now, though. Sort of, there's more of a...
I feel like
correct.
There's definitely still that in jazz, though. Definitely, like technically, people just seem to keep raising the bar, like just the general standard. Yeah. So
I mean, I think the thing with gospel music that like kind of freaks me out is how like people that play that style are able to get it just by hearing it, like, and sometimes just hearing it once, and like then play something like back note for note, or even just come up with some of the stuff they come up with. You know, it's not always like the most musical choices in my opinion, but you know, I mean, you can't, having the chutzpah to do it, you know, you can't really like, you got to give it up, you know.
And do those drummers show you things like, or do you show them stuff like?
Well,
do you give them the mantra? The Dawson book, son.
No, because
are
you
you saved?
I'm not I'm not deep enough into that to really be able to do that. I mean, in terms of I've never really asked anyone to kind of show me sort of, I guess, something, you know, on the drums like that, just because like, you know, I don't have that same like attack that a lot of those guys do, that really, I think that's a large part of that sound, and that's why it makes it so kind of successful at what it, or you know, so that's why it makes it work kind of like the way it does. It's just so forceful, you know, and that's not really the way that I play the drums, you know. I mean, you know, I could play to get through a service, and there are things that I have observed and just kind of checked out by watching, you know, my friends play or whatever, like how to play shout music and things like that. But you know, I mean, the way I would do it would be a lot less exciting than than a lot of, you know,
the Billy Higgins version. Billy who?
So, but I mean, I've asked keyboard players to show me stuff, and you know, I actually had a little gig for a while playing Hammond organ for a small church in the Bronx, which was kind of fun. But
so right now, you what are you doing for money? You're doing it. You've got a church gig.
Yeah, I play actually a couple of different ones, but I play guitar at you know, where I attend and help out there, and I also play drums at another church in the Greenwich Village. It's wildly different though. It's more of like a jazz focus, that service and stuff. So I do that. I mean, I do some production work, like mixing and cover art and CD cover art, and yeah, I have a few students, and so
that's how it works. And you've got a rig in your house to mix on, or
yeah, I mean, it's just a
Pro
Tools rig kind of. It's mainly like in the box, but you know,
you
it works.
mix jazz records.
Yeah,
and you've done some gospel.
Yeah, and I mean, I have friends that, you know, I help. Well, I have friends that play like with R&B artists and things, and sometimes I collaborate with them on like writing tracks and things like that.
Have you taken any drum lessons here with anyone?
Yeah, I've taken a few actually. I've taken a lesson with Nasheet Waits and Jimmy Cobb, Gene Jackson, Willie Jones, Adam Nussbaum, and I think Michael Carvin. But that was a long time ago.
And what did Jimmy Cobb say?
What do you want to learn?
That's what he said?
Yeah.
That's nice.
So,
Sounds
yeah.
like a good teacher.
It was cool. You know, like I got to ask him a lot of questions and about, I'm sure he gets those questions all the time though, you know, like,
why are you so amazing?
well, I asked him about what it was like playing with Paul Chambers, and you know, what kind of cymbal did you use on Kind of Blue and things like that, you know. Yeah, so it was cool, and he gave me a few little pointers on some, you know, soloing and things like that. Like, I mean, his thing was really like comes from that rudimental like approach and kind of taking that around the drum set. So
So learn your paradiddles. He believes in that.
Well, I think that's kind of like a product of that time, really. You know,
when he's comping, if he's just playing behind someone, and he's playing a ride pattern, is there like a rudimentary approach to? Is it can he just repeat a groove that's just a rudimentary pattern? Is he thinking that way, or is it sort of he's just playing time, and then when he comes to say something, does that when the language arrive?
I think that from what I've observed, I think that's kind of more of Jimmy Cobb's approach. Like, I mean, to me, like he's like a master comper. You know, the Joe Henderson record 4, the live one with Paul Chambers and Wynton Kelly and him. It's just particularly like behind the piano solo on Green Dolphin Street is just ridiculous. Like, and what he does with the bass drum and the interaction between the snare drum and the bass drum, to me it just seems like so spontaneous, like he's doing stuff like in the moment.
So you don't hear rudiments so much in that.
No, like,
you just hear a language, you just hear someone
and
creating and
I mean
talking.
when I hear him solo too, I don't really hear it as rudiments, you know, like I mean, to me it's done in such a melodic way that it's so musical that, you know, that's just the vocabulary or the means that he's using to express that. But it's
so maybe working through the rudiments and all of that stuff enables him to just express himself without having to think too much.
And I think, because I think one thing that he did say to me, you know, because I was talking to him about soloing and the whole idea of, like, you know, from a drummer's point of view, sometimes it can be a little like nerve-wracking. Like, you get everyone takes a solo and things, and the bass solo happens, and then everybody drops out, and it's just you, you know. and like,
I'm gonna make some coffee. Do you guys want some instant coffee or?
Oh, I'm okay.
Espresso or?
I think I'm okay for the moment.
Yeah, keep talking.
So, I mean, I kind of talked to him a little bit about that, like about that feeling of just
being by yourself.
Yeah, like being like kind of all out there and things. And he sort of his response in general was kind of like, yeah, well, you know, you got to have something prepared to play. And I don't think he was talking about it from the point of view of like have licks that are prepared to, you know,
a fair idea of knowing what you're going to do before you start,
and then have some stuff under your, you know, in your hands kind of thing, like, or under your hands. You know, I guess guitarists would say under your fingers.
Yeah, I guess it's like knowing scales and chords and simple things like that, or like
like, so you have at least something to draw from when it comes time to improvise. And I mean, that's the way I hear, like the way Philly Joe played too, and things like. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm like very good at that kind of rudimental approach. Like, it's something that I'm still really like working on, but I definitely have like a lot of respect for it, and it's something that I do want to, you know, shed more.
Sorry. So. Just in terms of like the pulse itself, like, what did Jimmy Cobb say about just improving your internal pulse, and is he into having a metronome, or does he believe good time is metronomic time, or?
We didn't really talk about that. He didn't really stress to me like playing with a metronome. I mean, you know, other drummers that I've kind of, you know, taken a lesson with or whatever. Like Gene Jackson had an approach that I really liked, actually, because it kind of reminded me of how I started out studying with Cole in Canberra. But it was like, you know, taking the metronome, and he recommends this particular app, you know, that it has a timer on it, so that you can set it for like a 2 or 3 minute interval, and, you know, playing along with the metronome, just with the ride cymbal, nothing else, and playing along with the metronome at that time, at that tempo. So, like, say he had told me to do it at 59 beats a minute, and then when the buzzer goes off, then you double that, and when the buzzer goes off again, then you double it again, and you repeat that cycle. You know, it was kind of like a disciplined approach to it. So it's like you're doing this, and it's almost like, I guess, sort of sprints in a way, and you, after you do this a certain number of times, then, like, you know, do one that's kind of more extended, and the whole and Adam Nussbaum had kind of shared something like that with me too about like, but his thing was more like playing it on the drum set, so it's instead of just with the ride cymbal, so you're kind of playing time and then double timing it, but not full on double time, so it's still like a 2-feel and a double time, and then full on double timing it. But he was doing shorter intervals, like eight measures or whatever.
So thinking different pulses,
right,
in relation to the pulse that's there.
Right, because I think, I mean, for me, the thing that really helped me kind of was Carl's the first thing that he gave me to do was the first lesson I walked into with Carl. You know, he told me, he put on the metronome at 90 beats a minute. He told me to play some time. So, you know, so the metronome's like here. So I'm playing.
Slower than that. 90. It's really quite slow.
I guess you're right.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
So the metronome's there, and I'm playing ding, 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 and I got through. I probably didn't even make it through 2 measures, and he stopped me. It was like, no, that's the triplet pulse. So it was like 1 triplet, 2 trip,
Oh yeah.
3 trip. So you're essentially playing at 30 beats a minute, and so like I practiced like that for a long time, maybe like a couple of years, like with the metronome, just kind of like playing my ride feel with that, and what that I feel like really helped me was to understand like the space between the notes.
Yeah.
You know, and when I listen to guys like you know, whoever, like Jimmy Cobb or Billy Higgins or Jack DeJohnette, like they each seem to have an understanding of like the space in between the notes, and like how and I think, you know, one thing I do kind of like about those guys is there is sort of like some sort of push and pull in the beat, you know, and so I think, you know, metronomically, yeah, like working with the metronome can really help to strengthen your internal pulse, but and I guess it's just personal preference, you know, but I don't mind so much if there's a little bit of, you know,
movement.
right.
What did Jimmy Cobb say anything if the bass player's ahead or rushing, or did he tell you what to do with that?
No, actually, I didn't ask about that.
That's stuff I think about, like, you know, like the drummer's dragging. Okay, the drummer's dragging. Now, am I racing, or is the drummer dragging?
Right.
What should I do now? Should I get faster to let the drummer know that I think he's dragging,
right?
Or she, or should I get slower and then see what happens? You know?
Yeah.
He didn't talk about that.
No, I mean, just from what I've noticed, like, and this was, I think, where this was a little bit of a, I wouldn't say a culture shock, but I just noticed like a difference between Australia and here. Like, New York has such a high concentration of individuals, you know, like in people who have a strong individual identity, and I think that when they play music, sometimes what happens is, like, in situations like that, it's like people just stay on their individual path, you know. So it's like if the drummer's dragging, then the bass player's just playing where he thinks the beat is, and I think in some situations that works. In other situations, maybe it doesn't. You know, I mean, Adam had you know, we had kind of talked similarly about this concept, and he had said to me, you know, that sometimes, like, you know, he'll just have a conversation with the person, like maybe on the break. Am I rushing? Yeah. Am I slowing down? Right. Or can we work together more? Yeah. Kind of thing. Like, if sometimes where he's, you know, he had sort of indicated if he felt like there was a place on the beat where it was maybe some tension, like, or it was uncomfortable, like where the two beats were kind of not aligning or whatever, sometimes he would just be like, hey, can we just, I'm having a little trouble here, can we work together on this kind of thing? That was a way that he suggested to me to approach something like that, Yeah.
And you'd never had that conversation in Australia?
No, not really. No, because I mean, I think, I don't know, like I became really, when I really learned about swing and really started to kind of, I guess, hear that more and understand that concept, like I became like really just, I wanted to like learn this thing, like in terms of, or I guess that's maybe not the right way to say it, but it's like I was just so intrigued by it.
But do you ever get there?
I don't know. I mean,
do you ever learn it?
I think it's something that definitely evolves.
Wake up one day and
like,
see the word
don't need to do it anymore.
Well, that's why I was saying, like, I think I used the wrong expression there. I think, I mean, I think definitely it's something that evolves.
I'm not trying to push you. It's something I think about. Like, do you actually ever get that?
I don't know.
I think it's dangerous to. I think that's the worst possible thing. If someone thinks they've got it as an artist, that's horrible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and so like getting back to
the Garden of Eden.
Getting. I guess you could say that. But my point was that I just really wanted to learn how to play with I guess like a good feel, like make the music feel good.
Yeah.
And that was really like,
well, you've achieved that.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
But like that was my focus.
But it can always be better though.
Of course.
And there's Jimmy Cole.
Right. Right. I mean, and I like listening to, Higgins, like, especially like throughout his whole career, when you hear him at the end of his career, and like his beat is kind of different, but it's still like, like I love hearing like those guys like when they're older, like Tootie Heath too. Like I love listening to Tootie Heath, because the beat is like so dirty. Like
it seems to get wider with drummers,
right?
When they're young, it's like it's sort of I'm doing this. Right? It's like very precise. And then like I think what happens. I mean, this is my theory, but I think what happens is that the what's in the mind stays the same, but the reaction time to all the limbs just gets a bit sort of slower, and maybe it takes a bit longer to get to your feet as it used to. So it's still the same beautiful thing, but it's just sort of a bit blurrier or something.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, because I mean, it's definitely like a large physical component to it. It's a very physical instrument.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, like, in response to that, I guess, it's always an evolution, but my goal was really I wanted to learn to be a good accompanist and like play with a good feel. And I sort of sometimes I regret that, because like I probably didn't focus on like solo chops as much as I could have, but then again, like, I mean,
I think that's a really good goal to have. I feel like I don't hear drummers say that, so I think that's good.
Oh, thanks.
So, yeah.
Whether or not, but yeah, so that's, I think, getting back to like that whole thing with Cole and his philosophy about like trying to find like how much music you can make out of something simple. I find myself now like coming back more to that, and and like I feel like, I hate bringing it up again, or I don't, but it's exemplified. Like Billy Higgins is a perfect example of that. Like where it's kind of sometimes very economical playing, but musically so profound.
He expresses emotion with sort of just by the way that he plays the thing,
and so much subtlety. And I think that's why, like, with that whole gospel chops phenomenon, like, I can't do it, like, because it's not what I'm into, I love it, but it's not what I'm into,
Oh, that's cool. Well, we've been talking for an hour, so we really need to take a pause and stop the camera But just just quickly, do you have any sort of goals for the future, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to do. I'm starting to get back into writing again, and I'm trying to kind of set up some things like for doing my own group, and I'd like to do another CD of like originals and things, and really try and get at musically, because I feel like musically I'm getting more focused, especially and getting back in touch with some things that I used to be in touch with, kind of thing,
Cool.
Yeah.
So one last question, which everyone gets, is in 10 years' time, where are you going to be? What are you going to be doing? You have to guess. And there can't be a range of alternatives.
Okay. Well, I'm
going
going
to make a guess.
I'm going to be paying for my daughter's college.
Ah! How old's your daughter?
I got 2 of them. One's going to be 9 this week, and the other one's 7.
Probably be in New York, right?
Probably, yeah.
You've married an American girl, I gather.
Yeah, I probably see myself staying here, I guess. I mean, who knows? But as from now, looking forward, as tough as it is to live here sometimes, like I still love it, and I love being around like such an amazing community of musicians, and
Cool. Well, I'll stop the tape. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Sure.
And
Thank you.
We'll take a pause for the cause. Andrew Swift.